Welcome to the Cross Counsel Podcast. We believe negative emotions shouldn't run your life. We invite you to take a deep dive into this challenging transformational journey that goes far beyond this podcast. Join Executive Director and expert facilitator Steve Freitag and me, John Crevillian, as we discuss how to deeply experience the love and truth of Jesus. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Cross Counsel Podcast, where we have today kind of a panel of people joining us today. All Cross Counsel family, of course. I am, of course, your host, John Crevillian. I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Freitag. How are you, Steve?
I'm getting squeezed here on this picture here on this. We've got a lot of people
we're
here, so I'm
really
excited.
We're Brady bunching it out here. Wow.
Oh, could you set that up? Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'm sure there's a template somewhere on the internet where I can just replace the squares on the actual thing and just have us being weird. But
and just put Alice in the middle. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll have all the employees and then just Alice in the middle. Word. I love it. Don't tempt me with a good time. Those edits are so funny to me. But yes, we are also joined by some other co-hosts, or some guests today, rather. We have our good friend Lucy Galvez. How's it going, Lucy? Welcome back.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we have Brynn and Jenni Freitag back at it again. How are you guys?
Good. Yeah, excited to talk about it.
Woo!
Yeah.
Summer break.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different speed for what the podcast normally is, so it's kind of fun to have the movie.
Yeah, this is a whole panel here. Yeah. Nah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. But and this is all in-house people. For those of you who haven't heard our guests in previous episodes, they've all been on at least once before. And today we're just we're going to have a little panel, and we're going to talk about Pixar movies, actually.
Cool.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. Most Pixar movies have I've liked them from back in my day. I don't know if they're still good, but back in my day, it was Incredibles and Toy Story and all those. So I definitely remember those. Those were a lot of fun. But I guess just as an icebreaker, because we can do that with this many people now. What was your guys' favorite Pixar movie growing up, or that you've seen? Maybe is a better way to put it. Lucy, what do you think? What was your favorite one?
Mine was Toy Story, but only because I think my brother wanted to watch it every day. So even till this day, I know all the words.
The Toy Story?
Yes.
The first one or
the movie? Okay.
The first one, we watched it probably every day for a year. Yes.
I remember watching that, and I was so young and my friends were so young. They were afraid of the baby doll head thing.
Oh, legit.
That was made out of metal and everything. And I was it's fine, guys. It's clearly pretend.
Right.
There were signs early on that I would like horror movies. But awesome. Okay, cool. Brynn, how about you?
Gosh, it's a tie between Up is classic. Yeah,
I love that one.
We all love
Up. Up is tough, dude.
But Incredibles, I really love the dynamic of what is it, Mr. Mr. Freeze, that
Frozone.
Oh, the bad guy?
Yeah, no, he's good.
Yeah. Samuel Jackson.
Yeah. My super suit.
Yeah, he's classic.
Where's my
exactly.
super suit?
I love that one.
Hilarious.
I really do.
Oh my god.
That was like a core memory for my mom when she heard "I'm the greatest good you're ever gonna get," because she said that a lot to me.
Oh my god. Is
how about you, Jenni?
Finding Nemo? That's Pixar, right? Okay.
Yeah. Finding Nemo's great
I
too.
Love the color and the playfulness, and Although we watched Ratatouille too recently. I thought that was fun.
Ratatouille's fun time. It's good. It's really good. How about you, Steve?
I don't know. Several of them have a special place in my heart because I think about Finding Nemo, and I think Boy, I think my mom, when she would watch Brynn, I think Brynn would watch Finding Nemo 3 times a day.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
In the
That's
winter.
my Toy Story. And
Can she quote all of that?
No,
Right.
I think maybe this is a me thing, but I cannot quote movies like you or like my brothers are so good at quoting movies, and it does not stay in my brain whatsoever.
Yeah, but if I say just keep swimming,
Well,
just keep swimming, right? You know exactly where that comes
course.
from. That's easy.
I do
Right?
have that
I'm
one.
just gonna I'm gonna randomly I'm just gonna say to Lucy, reach for the sky and see what she does.
Yeah, I think a lot of times me and my siblings, we talk in movie. It's our language.
Wow.
Sure. Oh,
Like,
like you
we'll-
quote it
Yeah,
to each
we'll
other.
just sit and we're laughing and laughing, just talking movie. That's it. Like, we're quoting certain things from different movies, but Toy Story is always that one. And actually, Finding Nemo is definitely. I remember watching that one. It was supposed to be for my siblings, and I think I was the one like crying of laughter. Like, I loved that
Oh,
movie.
great. Wow. We recently sat down with a group of people who are fairly new to Cross Council. There was a common theme. While they found some results with traditional approaches, when they fully engaged in the melt process, there was simply no comparison. What God did in their hearts through the ministry of Cross Council is some of the most profound healing they've ever experienced. Help us share this healing with others. Become a monthly donor. We want to reach as many people with this message of hope as we possibly can. When you support Cross Council, you not only share the load of the ministry costs and the sessions, but you also help us provide content and that message of hope through the various platforms. We're so grateful to be doing this with you. Thanks for listening.
That's awesome.
That's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, is because movies really speak to us. They really
Yeah.
capture story, and I think Pixar set a new standard for telling story. And what I love about what's happening in the Christian world is that studios like Angel Studios are doing a fantastic job of unfolding story. I mean, you think especially of The Chosen, but there are other movies that they put out recently that they are just really good stories, and that captivates people. So that's why we want to take the opportunity to use a movie that just came out, like Inside Out 2, to try to communicate a little bit about what we do here at Cross Council, how that all fits.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who don't know, like, what Inside Out is, it's a newer Pixar movie. It's essentially the meme that I've seen online is, Pixar always goes, "What if X had feelings?" Right? Like, what if fish had feelings? Finding Nemo. What if toys had feelings? Toy Story. And Inside Out is, what if feelings had feelings? And essentially, what it is a depiction of like a young girl and the emotions that are all in play inside of her head. And you have 5 emotions. You have joy, anger, fear, sadness, and disgust. And these are all like little animated characters, and they are in charge of operating this person called Riley. And essentially, there's a lot of chaos throughout the movie because Riley's a young girl in the Midwest, and one day her parents decide to up and move, and kind of the emotions she goes through, and how those emotions are depicted, what happens when each of them is in charge or making choices on Riley's behalf, and how that affects her in reality, if you will. It's a really, really good movie. The first one's phenomenal. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, we highly recommend it. It's great. Go watch it. But
and no kidding, let me just interrupt for a second. I just had somebody in recently who grew up in Minnesota, like Riley did, played hockey, and then had moved several times. And that person hadn't seen Inside Out. I'm like, are you kidding? We're doing a podcast this week on that. So you'll have to listen. You'll have to watch the movie and then listen to the podcast. So I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. Fun.
Yeah. So everyone here has seen Inside Out, right? I would assume so. Good. Right. So maybe as a starting question here, which emotion character resonated the most with you, and why? And again, those are joy, anger, fear, sadness, and disgust.
I think it's easy to want to say joy. I would imagine we all want to say that, oh yeah, our dominating characteristic or our dominating
Sure.
emotion would be joy. And yeah, just thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm joy. Like I would love to say that I'm super positive, and to some degree I think that's true. But honestly, I think disgust has a real that is, if it's joy and disgust, those are definitely in my top two. I have this thing where I really don't like quite literally to get my hands dirty. That I don't like the sensation of like dirt under my fingernails. Like that is probably just like the worst feeling in the world. I hate it. So
Sure.
I do relate to a lot of that disgust. Even if I don't know if you consider that an emotion entirely, and we can talk more about that, but I do resonate a little bit with disgust.
Word. Okay, cool. How about you, Jenni? What do you feel?
I think I agree in that as I watched the character Joy throughout the movie, I thought, oh my word, I'd love to be more like that. The constant optimism, the desire to see the bright side of all circumstances. And obviously throughout both movies, you see her struggle even to maintain that outlook. But it was fun to watch both of them in the last week, and really, like I was asking the Lord about that. Like, boy, Lord, I'd like to be more like that. It doesn't mean I am that as much as just it was enviable, which isn't until movie two.
True.
To have the optimistic outlook and just that spin. It's very infectious or desirable, right?
Cool. Yeah, very much so. How about you, Lucy?
I think mine was like in between sadness and anger. Because growing up, I was very, not sadness, like, just depressed and, kind of down all the time, but I was very empathetic and compassionate with everybody. But,
Sure.
that kind of, at times would make me angry because I didn't want to feel compassion towards some people because I was like, you're just mean. You're just a mean person. And so I would get angry. But I think I kind of resonated more with those two. And joy, I was just like, nobody's ever that happy. Like you're joking.
This is pretend.
Yeah, that's not real. But
Joy doesn't have house payments, like
right. Joy doesn't have to do anything. Yeah, so that's what I would say for me.
Word. How about you, Steve?
I would say sadness would probably be the one that if I'm honest with myself, probably resonates the most, unless they would have animated anger in a different way. And it's he's voiced by Lewis Black, which is perfect casting, and it's probably the longest Lewis Black has ever gone on screen or whatever without dropping an F-bomb. So for him to be contained in a Pixar movie is actually quite fascinating to me. But my anger would have been painted gray, I think, or animated gray, and where like it's there, and all the dialogue of anger might be there just with this muted sense of I don't want you to see that I'm angry. And so
sure.
But yeah, so sadness. And just to comment on Brynn's disgust, I apologize, or do I not, for all the dad jokes. That's maybe what developed her disgust is, oh, dad.
Kind of cultivated that there.
Right.
I'm sure.
You, Jon?
For me, like, I definitely like watching anger on screen. I'm like, finally, someone gets it. But I think like when it comes down to it, I think actually it's disgust for me. I think there's a lot more of like that, like catty, like, imagine being that far left in the lane. Oh my God. Like there's a lot more of that.
So would you say
Like, oh, good.
disgust
Go ahead.
is almost more like this judgmental side, this judgmental piece that we have? Because I think, disgust for me, the way that they depicted it kind of was pretty narrow, and she's like this green, like little animated girl, I think it's Mindy Kaling in the first movie. Again, like just awesome casting there. But yeah, maybe it is. Like I liked that example that you used, John, not to cut you off, but definitely
No
thought, like,
worries.
oh, why are you
Yeah,
doing
I think
something
it's
that
too
way?
much Mean Girls generation in me.
Yeah.
You can't sit with us. Like that sort of thing. Like, yeah, dude, she can't though. She can't. But anyways, yeah, cool. So
So
looking
with
back
the,
on
I was just going to
go
say
ahead.
too, John, with the
Yeah.
disgust, and I want to talk about joy quite a bit as well, but with
Mhm.
disgust, technically, because we want to sort of help people understand through a movie like this a bit of like what Cross Council agrees with and how we appreciate a movie like this that puts emotion on the front burner, but also some of the possible nuances or just the straight up, yeah, we don't exactly see things that way. Disgust would be grounded in self-protection, and they do say that it's like that's disgust's job is to prevent her what's the Riley's character from being poisoned, whether physically or emotionally or socially. That's kind of what it says. So disgust is sort of an action that we take. It's a conclusion we come to for self-protection. So it is sort of in the anger family. So we wouldn't call that a core emotion here. And I think Joy is a really fascinating character, and the way that they depict it, she's the first character that shows up. So I think for Inside Out, it's been out for about 9 years. So if there's spoilers, I'm sorry, you've had 9 years to see it. With Inside Out, I think we can try to dance around that a little bit more when we get to Inside Out 2. But that's how the movie starts, is with Joy, which is fascinating. I was introduced to Dr. Jim Wilder about 20 years ago or so, and he's a neurotheologian. Break that down, right? So he's brilliant when it comes to brain chemistry, and he considers himself a theologian of sorts as well. And when this ministry first started, when we were first introduced to it, it was called Theophostic Prayer Ministry, and that's again a goofy word, theophostic, but all it means is God's light, and it's changed to Transformed Prayer Ministry. And in the history of TPM, there were 2 international conferences, and so he presented at both. I presented at the second one, but Dr. Wilder presented at the first one. He gave this fascinating talk on dissociative identity disorder, and he talked about brain function. And a big part of his work is about joy. And that's what we all want to return to. Even when a mother is nursing, the baby that is content is filled with joy. So I think that's brilliant how they started the movie. And then sadness creeps in. And if, again, a spoiler, sadness is the second emotion to show up. And if you've noticed, their hair color is exactly the same. There's such distinction between a lot of the emotions, and there certainly is a huge difference between joy and sadness. But the creators of the movie wanted to link the hair color because of how closely related they are. It's like, I don't know if it's 2 sides of the same coin. That might not be the best way to put it, but how when we're sad, what we want is we want to return to joy. When a baby is crying, when a baby is discontent, it wants to return to joy. And the deeper the connection that the brain has with I'm safe is huge. So joy really is at the center of what we desire. What we hate is disconnection. We hate rejection. We hate isolation. And when we feel that, or even an injustice feels like some sense of disconnection. And so we want to return to joy. And so that's, I think, a profound thing with them starting the movie with joy. Like what we've already said, what Brynn has emphasized at the beginning here, is that we all want that joy. And that's true for all of us. That's what we all want. It's not where we all live, but it's the desire of our heart is to live in joy. So
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like that opens it up to like kind of a bigger discussion point on the movie itself, which is, what do you guys like about it? What do you think it got right, especially when it comes to like Cross Council and our ministry here? I love that those notes on joy being the first emotion, and I never put together that they how closely joy was connected to sadness and like the allegory happening there. That's really interesting. but I'll just open it up for anyone. Yeah, what do you think? What do you think the movie got right about just emotions and things that we've seen in our experience?
I think for me it was the fact that it was okay to feel all of these things, to feel your
Ooh.
emotions. That's what, when I was watching it, because I had never seen it. It's been out 9 years and I just saw it like a month ago.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, so I was like, what in the world have I been missing all this time? Like I had no idea. But that was the thing that got my attention the most, was like, geez, she felt all of these emotions and it's okay. Like it's okay. So that's why I was like, oh my God, I gotta tell these guys, they have to watch this movie. Like this movie is, oh my goodness. Cause for me, you know, we've talked about it before. For me, I would shut down. My emotions would totally, I wouldn't show anything. So I would shut down. And so this movie was like, wow. I like, it just made me see just emotions differently, because that's what cross counsel did for me, was,
Sure.
hey, you know, you feel these things and it's okay. You know, it's okay to feel those things. So for me, it was just the emotions in general. Like, you know, that was so big for me.
Like all are kind of welcome in that headspace, you know,
Yeah.
and all are needed to like function essentially.
Right. Yeah.
None
It
of them
doesn't make
should
you
be
weak.
repressed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, yes.
Good word, Lucy.
Yeah, I thought
What do y'all think?
in the moment, so we're kind of starting from one, right? The first one, the idea of when sadness had a place, like kind of like you were saying, Lucy, everything, you have permission, or it's all okay to feel all of these things. And that Joy was trying to rescue in a time when she was genuinely sad and wanted to be heard, right? I'm trying to think what was going on. Oh, was it Bim?
Yeah, there's the part of the plot in the movie, and I was thinking about this scene as well because we talked about it as we were watching it, but I don't know how to describe it. It's very abstract, of course, because we're lost in Riley's brain, and there's all these like character islands or personality islands, and then headquarters is where these 5 emotions are stationed, and that's where they essentially control Riley. And I think, you know, of course, there has to be some sort of problematic thing that happens. So it's sadness and joy get kicked out of headquarters, and they're trying to find their way back.
Yeah.
That's the whole kind of like trail of the movie. And along the way, joy and sadness are like traipsing their way back through, and they run into her imaginary.
Is it Bimbo?
Bing Bong.
Bing Bong. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bing bong.
That's a different podcast.
It was close.
I knew I couldn't land that close.
Oh no.
Okay, Bing Bong. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, essentially. So
Oh my goodness.
I think they were trying to get. You good?
Yeah, good.
Trying to get.
Save it, Brynn. Save it. Come on.
I don't even know. Is it worth it anymore?
Yeah.
We've lost.
No,
Derailed.
that's B-roll. That's the B-roll. B as in Bing Bong.
Yeah. So Bing Bong is like part of the rocket that him and Riley like came up with as kids. Gets lost in memory. So basically, Riley is forgetting about her imaginary friend, and
She's
the
growing
piece
up
is
and-
lost, and that's why he was so sad. And
Yeah, and it was sadness that could speak into that moment as opposed to joy. Right? It was the importance of being able to be sad rather than, Lucy, like what you were saying, rather than sort of stuffing down our emotions or pretending like we don't feel them, but having that moment to acknowledge it, put it out there. And sadness was the emotion that was needed there, rather than to brush things over and be joyful and pretend like things are fine when they're not. So I thought that was, I loved that aspect. I thought they got that right on some level. I don't know how you would perceive that, Steve, but yeah, I thought that was important. I also love that he cried candy, just as a side note.
that's true.
That would have been my imaginary friend as a kid.
There was no disgust there. That was jealousy when
Yes.
you saw that he cried candy. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, with the sadness thing, there is truth-based sadness. And if we don't face that, we have a very difficult time getting through grief. So it's like head on. if something is sad, we should take a look at that and be sad in that. Also check out, is there anything else that's complicating this sadness? And that's not where the movie goes, but I do agree that to acknowledge that sadness does play an important role in our humanity. It played a role in Jesus's humanity, and so why shouldn't it play a role in ours?
Nice.
Right. And then, like, did you guys notice when sadness and joy are like trying to make their way back, the panel goes gray? Like, and it's showing in that scene that Riley's getting on the bus to run away from home.
Yeah.
And the panel, everything, the buttons that they're pushing are turning gray. The levers they can pull are gray. So it's like she doesn't feel anything. And then finally, once sadness comes back in, it's like she brings back, like, whoa, I need my family. You know, I want to go home. So it takes her back. Like, I'm like, man, sadness is so important. We think that, you know, oh, don't be sad. Well, sadness sometimes puts everything in perspective, in my opinion. You know, it kind of helps you. It brings you back, puts your feet back on the ground, and it grounds you sometimes. Like, okay, you know, it's not because something sad happened. It's because that time in my life is gone, and that makes me a little bit sad. But you know, let's move forward now. So like, I saw how much sadness and joy, they intertwine. Like I feel like they're just one. Like, you know, they have to be together, and they were the whole time in the movie. You know, they were together, but that scene got me like, wow, like that's what I was doing. I was numbing out. Like, it just helped me. It put so many things, like, wow, there's that thing. That's what was happening. You know? So once that panel started to go gray, I was like, yeah, that's numb. She was feeling numb. She didn't want to feel that, you know, whatever it was that she was feeling. But yeah, I'm like, you know, if you've never been sad, then how do you appreciate joy? You know, if
True.
it's, you know, I think sometimes people will just take it for granted, but you know,
Yes.
I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the reality? If we never have the rainy days, we don't appreciate the sunshine. And that's very cliche, but I think you're right. If we don't have both, I think it's a matter of then what does it look like to be mature in the way we handle sadness, as opposed to wallow in sadness or getting stuck in it. And I don't,
Right.
yeah, that maturing that the character was doing, but for us as humans, what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's what cross counsel did for me. Was I was wallowing. I lived in sadness. It was, you know, I had that, I'm just going to live here. I'm going to, you know, sit here and die in the sadness. And cross counsel helped me to see that I didn't have to live there. You know, it was like, let's give this all to the Lord, and, you know, he'll make it better. He does make it better. He does transform you. He does bring things into perspective. He does bring that joy. You know, it's one thing to say the scripture, but once you start to believe it, you know, the joy of the Lord is my strength. You start off by saying that, and it's like, well, do I really believe it? And then it starts to just be like, man, that is so true. Like, I don't feel that heaviness. I don't feel that sadness anymore so strongly like I used to. So that's why cross counsel's always been so important to me, because it helped me to get up from sadness. You know, it helped me to get out of that. So that's why I said, you know, I resonated so much with sadness in this movie. I was just like, oh my goodness. You know, like, I loved that character. But she's what made me think of cross counsel while I was watching it. Because I was like, dude, I used to be that. I used to be that right there. Oh my goodness. So yeah.
That's beautiful, Lucy. Wow.
Yeah,
I love that part of your story.
I think the pointing out of the console being gray is really important as well. And I, you know, my mind always goes to sports. It's sort of the idea of playing not to lose instead of playing to win. So would we rather live in the gray, or would we rather live in the darkness? And so the numbness is a choice that we make, even subconsciously. It's like, I would rather shut down and try not to feel something. There, it's the emotions are underneath the surface, but it's one of those pain managing behaviors that we learned so early on. Is I would rather feel the gray and just sort of wallow in the gray and just limp through life, then take the risk of seeing what's actually underneath the gray. What am I protecting? What are those things inside of me that I've carried for so long? And that the Lord can actually restore, and he can reconcile, and he can redeem, so that the color comes back.
Well, and that makes sense for the context of the movie. I don't know if it was shared, but Riley's running away from home, and that's like the motivator is get back to Minnesota. She's in California. All of her circumstances are going wrong. She doesn't feel like she fits in at school, and doesn't make the hockey team. Like, kind of has all these like obstacles that come up, and the solution is I'm just going to go back to where I was happy. And so then all the numbness comes because she's trying to shut down, and just this is the goal. I'm going to go move back. It's that motivator to get her there, but it's not doing her any favors. Obviously, it's a terrible choice, but that's what she chose.
I feel like at some level I can understand wanting to flee California and live in the Midwest. That's besides the point.
Yeah.
You mean at every level.
As the meme
Our
goes.
apologies to the California listeners.
We like California. We do. We do.
It's fine, I guess.
Oh, see. Yeah, I think it's interesting. And the gray is usually then in the numbness is where then those false pain solutions come into play, right? Like you talked about, Steve. That would be the point where I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to run to that or that vice or that substance or that behavior, right? I mean, that's to avoid feeling all of those things. I want to numb. And this thing helps me numb, right? Rather than what is it to mature? What is it to look at having the courage to step into these emotions and find that God is greater, God is better, God is the answer. And that is obviously this lasting solution. You come out of your pain management solutions and feeling gross and defeated and shame. And, whereas right now, as we call people to this process, it is the encouragement that hope is possible. Lucy, like you were saying, God pulls us out of the gray. And this, for us, what we have found in the melt process is just, it's systematic to be able to figure out why, what's going on. What are these emotions that have me lingering with a gray console? Colors are lost and I just am numb.
Yeah, it was such a good, like, accessible way to show what, like, dissociation looks like to, like, young kids in a way that makes sense, It was really, really cool. Very well handled. But yeah, I guess just to kind of change up the conversation a little bit here, were there any points in the movie that you kind of disagree on? Was there anything that you would say, like, okay, the movie did this, it's cute, but it's not really what we believe?
I've got things to say, but I want to hear from everybody else.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll start it off. I think that they kind of take the tropes of the parents a little bit. They make it a little too reductive, I think, especially with the dad, of him being kind of just like, oh no, like for everything. I'm like, dog, you got the same emotions in him though. So I look at that and I think like that was like a little bit like, I don't know about that. But that's besides the point.
Yeah.
That's more along the lines of like, hey, like these struggles are the same for every person. I get why they did it and it's funny, but like, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It was a narrow depiction of the dad character, right? Like we'd go to his emotions and they were all about the game. Nobody was listening or whatever. So yeah. You're right. I think that's a debate.
Yeah. Dad headquarters, a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you just on that, actually, I did notice how the moms like so for Riley, Joy would be like the main controller of all these emotions, and then for Dad it's anger, and Mom it was sadness. So I found that to be an interesting like kind of stereotype of a dad, that his main core emotion would be anger, and then the mom is sad or just like, so I don't know if that, I'm sure it was intentional, but I don't know what they're trying to say with that.
I think in that though, I think that the anger was more like a protective. Like dads are protective. Dads are usually the disciplinary
Sure.
parent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and mom is more, not because she's sad, but because she's more empathetic. She's more compassionate. She can come down to your level and, you know, hold you if you need to be held, or, you know, that's what I think. Cause I noticed that too. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was anything in the movie that I was like, no, not really cross council ish, but I think I was so excited about the emotions, just feeling the emotions. That was, you know, I don't know. I don't know that I noticed anything that I would say, you know, no, we don't agree with that.
Fair enough.
I think maybe for me, and I honestly, I really loved the first one, and I think they did such a great job.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. Absolutely.
But yeah, kind of more towards my question towards the beginning is, would we categorize these as like our 5 core emotions? Disgust, I don't really know if that would be a core emotion. Is it an underlying thing that we feel? Is it more, what did you say, Steve? Like not a judgment, but it disgust is
Self-protection.
Yeah.
Well, it's right. It's a decision we make, right? It's way more complicated. It's a brilliant series. Both movies are brilliant, so we don't want to downplay any of that. And you can only work with so many characters, and I think they do an amazing job of that. That said, I wouldn't say that. I think anger is a secondary emotion, and so disgust would also be in that category within the realm of anger. And what they emphasize, it's sort of, to me, it's like Jonathan Haidt, brilliant psychologist, and he talks about the illustration of an elephant and a rider, and that the rider thinks that he's in control of the elephant, but in reality, the elephant is like emotion. It's like the right side of the brain is a better way to put it, which is where our core beliefs are. And like we think, so if the rider is the left brain, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to steer this elephant this way, but the elephant can do whatever the elephant wants. You know, he's got, you know, an elephant is 20 times heavier than a man. And so it's this idea in the Inside Out movies that they sort of just kind of bottom out with, well, emotion is emotion and experiences are experiences. And they have what they call core memories. And I think that's really important because a lot of people say, well, just leave the past behind you. You know, just forget the past. You can't live in the past. Well, memory does play an important role, but that's why we have the MELT process. The memory is just the container. There's no sense of the interpretation of what the memory is. It's like, oh, bad memory. Okay, that's going to affect you poorly. And that's really not how it works. That's often how it works, but you can actually have a good memory and still have a twisted, distorted belief. I've probably mentioned this, but early on in our podcast, where I was in first grade and my first grade teacher held this paper up next to a girl in the class and was like, this is how you print clearly. Look at Steve and look at, I'll just say Mary, because we always say Mary, right? And I was so embarrassed that my paper was being held up. Now, everybody on the outside would say, wow, that's a really great memory. That'd be a really positive experience for me. But it was embarrassing because of the belief that I attached to it. It shouldn't have been. So you can have what seem to be good experiences, and it's so easy for us to take things the wrong way. But that brings a complexity to it that I don't expect from a movie for what it's trying to do. So it's just, well, good memory, bad memory, core memories. Okay, these are really important, but there's no sense of actually being able to, and I don't expect this from a Pixar movie either, where the Holy Spirit or Jesus, however you want to put that, can actually change our interpretation. So that's the hope that we have. Otherwise, it's okay, how can I just order my memories and prioritize them in a way that I keep the good memories on top and continue to shove the bad memories down so I can live in joy? And so So it's super compelling. Those movies are super compelling, but it doesn't capture, what would you say, the nuance of how beliefs are formed, and the interpretation and our responses because of the beliefs. So I think that's critical in our ministry to understand that interpretation of memory is what's really important. So
I
does that
guess,
make sense?
yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And I actually would say that by the end of the movie, though, they are kind of capturing that nuance, because you see those memory globes. You see they're all used to be the like uniform one color for each emotion. And then by the end, there is the sense of you can have joy with sadness. And I know you were talking more about our misinterpretations of good things, but I did like that resolve of you can have, like we said, two sides to the same coin. You can have joy in a memory, and it's mixed with sadness as well. And I think that was kind of, there is a point in the movie where we see a clip of a scene of Riley is super into hockey, and it's like her sport. She loves it in Minnesota. And they actually lost the game. She like missed the winning goal. And but what Joy sees, we just see this imagery of her being lifted up by her teammates, and so we think that, oh, she must have won the game. It was a great memory, and that's what Joy sees. But sadness was like, no, we lost that game. What are you talking about? That was terrible. And so by the end of the movie, you kind of see like, oh, it was a sad memory that turned into joy because of, like, I guess we were talking about this earlier. Sadness turns into joy. That's our default. And so I did like that they added that nuance. But again, I know that you were talking more about our twisted misinterpretations. So
Well, that's what
No,
the
I think
Lord.
that's a good addition.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's what the Lord does, right? He takes that sadness and turns it into joy, right? I mean, they're not giving credit to Jesus, so they would put that at the hands of humans, helping people, right? Being kind to one another and encouraging somebody, which is also our job. But in the process, in the outlook of what we do and what we pursue in those areas where we know we have sadness or misinterpretations, or we don't know what's wrong with us and we're cycling through this behavior and I can't figure out why, the melt process is great for that, because we see the Lord redeem these memories with those false beliefs, and then whatever the resulting emotion is, the freedom that's found in there.
Yeah, and then too, I think the melt process helps us to put a name to the emotion that we're feeling. And that was one of the things Mary, and my first few sessions with Mary was, let's name that emotion, and I had no idea how to do that. Like, it took me so long to understand my emotions. And even sometimes today I'm like, okay, let me sit down and I journal, because I need to talk about it. Like, that's how I process. And it's like, okay, well, there's this, this keyword and this keyword. Oh, okay. So what I'm feeling is overwhelmed. I'm just overwhelmed. That's what's going on here. So I think the melt process to me is so important, because it helps us to, yes, we focus on the Lord, but we're also like, okay, let's name this thing. Let's name what's going on. So for me, in the melt process, that helped me. It still, to this day, it helps me a lot, especially when feeling overwhelmed, to name what I'm actually feeling. So yeah.
Yeah, guys, great movie. A lot of fun, a lot of cool stuff in it. Really good depictions of of human things, human emotions, human problems, that sort of thing. So, any final thoughts before we wrap this up? I'll just open the floor up to anyone who's got some.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie or movies, I would say, yeah, take a look at those and see what that stirs up inside of you. What do you identify with? What are you confused by? What are those areas, or those even those memories? Maybe by watching a movie like that, it gives you just that motivation to go, okay, you know what? Maybe when I did move, once, twice, three, whatever times, what impact did that have on me? Because that's shown in one of the movies as well, is her walking into the cafeteria and not having a place to sit with somebody else. She has to sit by herself, and like the impact. So I would say on that side, those are great movies to see what is the Lord trying to get at in me? What is he trying to expose in me so that he can do that healing?
This has been the Cross Counsel Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, share with your friends, and look for us on social media. The world will become a much better place, and Jesus will be seen in a much better light the more we are transformed by his truth and love. We'll see you next time, everybody.